The alien queen saw me and gave an order, stand down. This is a human and no warrior. Asterisk. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her hand against the bleeding cut on her forehead and tried to focus through the pain. The jungle around her was alive with strange sounds. Clicks, whistles, and low humming noises that made her skin crawl. Her shuttle lay in pieces somewhere behind her, smoke still rising from the crash site. The emergency beacon had been crushed in the impact, and her communication device showed only static. She had been on a simple research mission. The planet Kithara was supposed to be uninhabited according to all the surveys. Just plants, maybe. Some small animals. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that would shoot down a peaceful science vessel. Sarah pushed through a curtain of thick, blue-tinted leaves and immediately froze. The vegetation here was different. Too organized, too neat. The trees formed perfect rows, and the ground beneath her feet felt smooth, almost like a pathway. This was not natural jungle growth. Someone had been here. Someone had made this place. A branch snapped behind her. Sarah spun around, her heart jumping in her chest. The jungle had gone completely silent. Even the strange humming had stopped. She could hear nothing except her own rapid breathing and the distant sound of wind. Through the alien trees. Then she saw them. They emerged from the shadows like nightmares given form. Tall, insect-like creatures with shiny black skin that reflected the dim light filtering through the canopy. Their bodies were long and thin, standing at least 8 feet tall, with 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. Their heads were triangular, dominated by large compound eyes that sparkled like broken glass. Most terrifying of all were the weapons. They carried sleek devices that hummed with barely contained energy. Sarah counted 6 of them, maybe more, moving in the darkness beyond her vision. They formed a circle around her, their weapons pointed directly at her chest. One of them made a series of rapid clicking sounds, and the others responded with similar noises. They were talking, she realized, planning what to do with her. She raised her hands slowly, palms open and empty. "I'm not armed," she said, knowing they probably could not understand her words, but hoping her tone would convey peaceful intentions. "I don't want to fight. My ship crashed. I just need help." The creatures clicked faster now, and she could hear what sounded like anger in their voices. One of them stepped closer, its weapon glowing brighter. Sarah could feel heat radiating from the device, and she knew it was charging up to fire. This was it. She was going to die on an alien world, killed by creatures that had never even heard of humanity. Her research would never be completed. Her family would never know what happened to her. The thought made her angry more than afraid. "Look, I know you can't understand me," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "But I'm a scientist. I study life. I protect it. I'm not your enemy." The lead creature raised its weapon higher, aiming directly at her head. Its compound eyes seemed to shine with cruel intelligence. The other creatures spread out, cutting off any possible escape route. Sarah closed her eyes and thought of her home, of Earth's blue skies and white clouds. Then a voice cut through the jungle like a blade. It was deep and commanding, speaking in the same clicking language as the soldiers, but with unmistakable authority. Every weapon immediately lowered. The creatures around Sarah stepped back, their aggressive postures changing to something that looked almost like respect. Sarah opened her eyes and gasped. The newcomer was clearly female, though much larger than the soldiers. Where they were black, she shimmered with colors that shifted like oil on water. Patterns of light moved beneath her skin, pulsing in slow, hypnotic rhythms. She wore no armor, but her presence commanded absolute attention. Her compound eyes were larger than the others, and they seemed to hold ancient wisdom. This was obviously their leader, their queen. The queen approached Sarah with slow, deliberate steps. Her 4 arms moved gracefully, and she held no weapon. When she was close enough that Sarah could see her reflection in those massive eyes, the queen stopped and studied her carefully. For long moments, they stared at each other in silence. Sarah felt as if she was being examined by intelligence far older and more sophisticated than anything she had ever encountered. The queen's head tilted slightly, and the light patterns under her skin pulsed faster than the queen's mandibles opened, and she made a sound that was almost like surprise. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back. She looked at Sarah again, this time with what appeared to be recognition. The queen turned to her soldiers and spoke in a voice that carried absolute command, though Sarah could not understand the words. She could hear the tone of someone who expected immediate obedience. "Stand down," the queen said, switching suddenly to accented but clear English. "This is a human." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every soldier not only lowered their weapon but took several steps backward. Some of them made what sounded like gasps of shock. A few actually dropped to one knee, as if they were in the presence of something sacred. Sarah stared in amazement. You speak English. You know what I am." The queen nodded slowly, her light patterns now pulsing in what seemed like excitement or perhaps nervousness. "Yes, human Dr. Sarah Chen. We know of your species. We have waited long for one of you to come to our world. How do you know my name? Your ship's identification was broadcast when you entered our system. We have been monitoring it." The queen paused, and her expression became solemn. "We did not shoot you down, Dr. Chen. That was the work of others who hunt us." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the jungle air. "Hunt you? Who's hunting you?" "The same ones who will come looking for your crashed ship," the queen replied. "The same ones who have been trying to destroy us for over 300 of your years." She gestured to her soldiers, who immediately began moving into defensive positions around them. "You are in great danger here, human, but you are also our hope." "I don't understand." The queen's compound eyes seemed to shine brighter. "Long ago, your people saved us when no one else would. They fought for us when they had no reason to do so. They died for us when they could have simply left." She bowed her head respectfully. "The debt we owe to humanity can never be repaid, but perhaps today we can begin to try." Distant sounds echoed through the jungle, mechanical sounds that definitely did not belong to any living creature. The soldiers clicked urgently to their queen, who listened and then turned back to Sarah with obvious concern. "They come," the queen said simply. "The hunters. They have found your crash site, and they will follow your trail." She extended one of her four hands to Sarah. "Come with us, Dr. Sarah Chen. Let us show you why your people are legends among the stars." Sarah took the queen's offered hand, surprised by how warm and smooth it felt despite its alien appearance. The moment their skin touched, she felt a strange tingling sensation, as if some kind of energy was passing between them. "My name is Empress Zythara," the queen said as she led Sarah deeper into the jungle. "I am the last ruler of the Zelenari people." The soldiers moved around them in perfect formation, their weapons ready but no longer pointed at Sarah. She noticed how they kept looking at her with what seemed like wonder mixed with deep respect. It was unsettling to be treated like some kind of hero when she was just a lost scientist. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked as they walked along what was clearly a hidden path through the dense vegetation. "To safety," Zythara replied. "To our city, the last city of my people." Her voice carried a sadness that made Sarah's heart ache. "You will understand everything soon, Dr. Chen. But first, we must get you away from the hunters." As if summoned by her words, the mechanical sounds in the distance grew louder. Sarah could hear what sounded like engines and the crash of metal moving through the jungle. Whatever was following them was big and did not care about being quiet. "What are those things?" Sarah whispered. "The Devourers," one of the soldiers answered in broken English. His voice carried pure fear. "They consume everything. They turn worlds into empty shells." Zythara raised her hand for silence, and the group stopped moving. In the distance, Sarah could hear a new sound, a high-pitched whining that seemed to cut through the air itself. The alien soldiers immediately crouched low, pressing themselves against the jungle floor. "Scanner beams," Zythara explained quietly. "They are looking for your human signature. Your DNA is different from ours. Easier for them to track." Sarah felt a stab of guilt. "I'm putting you all in danger just by being here." "No," Zythara said firmly. "You are giving us something we have not had in centuries. You are giving us hope." They waited in tense silence as the scanning sounds moved past them. Only when the mechanical noises faded into the distance did Zythara signal for them to continue. Moving, they walked for what felt like hours, going deeper and deeper into the jungle until Sarah began to wonder if they were moving in circles. Then the ground beneath her feet changed. What had looked like solid earth was actually a clever camouflage covering a smooth metal surface. Zythara pressed her hand against a hidden panel, and a section of the jungle floor slid away to reveal a tunnel leading down into darkness. "Welcome to our home," Zythara said with a sad smile. The tunnel was clearly ancient but well maintained. Soft lights activated as they walked, illuminating walls covered with beautiful carvings that told stories Sarah could not understand. The air grew warmer as they descended, and she could hear the distant sound of moving water. After several minutes of walking downward, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took Sarah's breath away. The ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into shadows, and the space was filled with buildings that seemed to grow directly from the stone itself. Thousands of Zelonari moved through the streets below, going about their daily lives in this hidden city. "This is incredible," Sarah whispered. "How long have you been living down here?" 312 of your years, Zythara replied. "Ever since the first great attack, ever since your people saved us." Sarah stopped walking. "My people, humans, saved you. When?" Zythara gestured to her soldiers, who immediately moved to secure the area. Then she led Sarah to a balcony that overlooked the city. "Come, it is time you learn the truth about why we honor your species above all others." They entered what was clearly a royal chamber, decorated with more of the beautiful carvings and lit by crystals that gave off a warm, golden light. In the center of the room stood a device that looked like a mixture of art and technology. Zythara approached it and placed her hands on its surface. Immediately, the air above the device shimmered and formed into moving pictures, holograms, that showed events from long ago. Sarah gasped as she saw space filled with massive ships engaged in battle. 312 years ago, Zythara began, her voice taking on the tone of someone telling a sacred story. "The Devourers came to our homeworld. They came without warning, without communication, without mercy. Their ships blacked out our sun, and their weapons began tearing our planet apart." The holograms showed the horror of that day. Zelonari cities burning, millions of people fleeing in panic, and above it all, the terrible mechanical ships of the Devourers, consuming everything in their path. "We send out desperate calls for help to every species we knew," Zythara continued. "The Altarians said they were too far away. The Vegan Confederacy claimed it was not their concern. The Rigel Coalition refused to risk their ships against such a powerful enemy." Sarah watched the images with growing dread. She could see Zelonari evacuation ships struggling to escape their dying world while the Devourer fleet systematically destroyed everything behind them. "But then," Zythara said, and her voice filled with something that sounded like religious awe, "a single human ship answered our call." The hologram changed to show a small vessel, clearly designed for trade, rather than war. Compared to the massive Devourer ships, it looked like a tiny insect challenging a pack of wolves. "The merchant vessel Defiant Hope," Zythara said, "Captain Marcus Webb commanding, with a crew of only 12 humans. They had been trading in a nearby system when they heard our distress signal." Sarah leaned forward, fascinated despite her fear. "What did they do?" "Something impossible," Zythara replied. "Something that changed the course of galactic history." The hologram showed the small human ship diving directly into the Devourer fleet. Sarah watched in amazement as it began attacking the massive enemy vessels with weapons that seemed laughably small in comparison. Captain Webb opened communications with our evacuation commander. Zythara continued. "His exact words have been preserved in our most sacred texts. He said, 'Get your people out of here. We'll hold them off as long as we can. We're just humans, but we don't leave friends behind.'" The holographic battle continued, and Sarah could see the impossible happening. The tiny human ship was not just surviving against the Devourer fleet, it was actually winning. Its unpredictable movements and creative tactics were confusing the larger ships, causing them to fire on each other in their attempts to destroy it. For 6 hours, Sci-Fi said. 12 humans held off an entire Devourer fleet. 6 hours. That allowed us to evacuate 8 billion Zelenari to safety. They used tactics the Devourers had never seen before. They fought with such courage and intelligence that the enemy began to retreat. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched the holographic battle. The human ship was clearly taking damage, but it never stopped fighting, never stopped protecting the fleeing Zelenari ships. Captain Webb's final transmission came as his ship was dying. Sci-Fi said softly. He said, "Tell the galaxy that humanity stands with those who cannot stand alone. Tell them that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it." The hologram showed the defiant hope exploding in a brilliant flash of light, taking 3 Devourer ships with it in its final moments. The remaining enemy fleet, shaken by their unexpected losses, retreated into hyperspace. Sarah wiped the tears from her eyes. They all died, every one of them, Zathar confirmed. But their sacrifice saved not just our people, but gave hope to the entire galaxy. Word spread of the humans who fought impossible odds and won. Species that had been conquered by the Devourers began to fight back. The tide of the war began to turn. Sarah stared at the now empty air where the holograms had been. "I had no idea. This isn't in any of our history books. Your government classified the information to prevent panic," Zathar explained. "But we have never forgotten. Every Zelenari child learns the names of those 12 humans. Every Zelenari knows that when all others abandoned us, humanity stood with us." A soft alarm chimed through the chamber, and one of the soldiers approached quickly. He spoke to Zathar in their clicking language, and Sarah saw the Queen's expression change to one of deep concern. "What is it?" Sarah asked. Zathar turned to face her, and Sarah could see fear in those ancient compound eyes. "Our sensors have detected a massive energy signature approaching the planet. The Devourers have found us again." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "And this time, they're bringing their entire remaining fleet." The underground city erupted into controlled chaos as alarms echoed through the stone corridors. Zelenari soldiers ran to their positions while civilians moved quickly toward deeper shelters. Sarah watched in amazement as the entire population mobilized with military precision, yet she could see the fear in their compound eyes. Zathar led Sarah to the city's command center, a vast chamber filled with glowing screens and complex instruments. The main display showed the space above their planet, and Sarah's blood ran cold at what she saw there. The Devourer fleet was enormous, hundreds of dark, angular ships emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Each vessel was the size of a city, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's surface. Sarah had seen pictures of Devourer ships in military briefings, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of seeing so many gathered in one place. "By the ancestors," whispered one of the Zelenari technicians. "It's their entire remaining fleet." Zathar studied the tactical display with grim determination. "They're not taking any chances this time. They mean to finish what they started 3 centuries ago." Sarah moved closer to the screens, her scientific mind automatically analyzing what she was seeing. Why are they just sitting there? Why haven't they attacked yet? "They're scanning," replied the chief technician, his voice shaky with fear. "Looking for the human DNA signature they detected from your crash," as if responding to his words. One of the massive Devourer ships began broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that filled the command center was cold and mechanical, speaking in perfect English. "Human designation Sarah Chen," the voice announced. "You will surrender yourself to us immediately. We have analyzed your species' tactical patterns. For 312 standard years, your primitive strategies will not save you this time." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "They know who I am. They fear you," Zathar said simply. "Just as they feared Captain Webb and his crew. Your presence here changes everything." The broadcast continued. "Citizens of this world, you harbor a human. Surrender this individual, and your termination will be swift. Refuse, and we will consume your planet slowly, processing every living being one at a time." The command center fell silent except for the soft humming of the instruments. Sarah could feel every Zelenari in the room looking at her, but not with blame or anger. Instead, she saw something that surprised her. Hope. I have to surrender. Sarah said quietly, I won't let innocent people suffer because of me. No, Zythara said firmly. You do not understand what you represent to us. To them, she gestured at the display showing the Devourer fleet. Your species taught us that impossible victories are possible. That 12 individuals can change the fate of billions. But I'm just one person, Sarah protested. And I'm not even a soldier. I'm a scientist. Captain Webb was a merchant, Zythara replied. His crew were traders, engineers, a cook, and a musician. None of them were trained fighters, yet they achieved the impossible. The chief technician looked up from his instruments with growing alarm. Your Majesty, they're beginning their descent. Scout ships are entering the atmosphere. On the screen, Sarah could see dozens of smaller vessels breaking away from the main fleet and diving toward the planet's surface. Each scout ship was still larger than her destroyed shuttle, and their weapons were already charging. How long before they reach us? Zythara asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Sarah's mind raced. She thought about everything she had learned about the Devourers during her xenobiology training. They were machine intelligences that had once been organic beings, but had converted themselves to artificial forms centuries ago in pursuit of perfection. They consumed worlds not for resources, but to eliminate what they saw as chaos and inefficiency in the universe. Wait, she said suddenly. You said they've been analyzing human tactics for 300 years? Yes, Zythara confirmed. They study every species they encounter, learning to counter their strategies. But that's the problem. Sarah realized they're thinking like machines. They assume humans fight the same way every time, that we have standard tactics they can predict and counter. The Queen's compound eyes focused intently on Sarah. What are you thinking? Sarah moved to the tactical display and began pointing at different locations around the planet. Humans don't have standard tactics. That's what makes us dangerous. Every time we fight, we do something completely different, something unexpected. She turned to face the room full of Zelanari officers. Captain Webb didn't defeat the Devourers by following some human military manual. He defeated them by doing something no one had ever done before, including humans. But we are not human, one of the officers said. We do not have your natural creativity in battle. No, Sarah agreed. But you have something else. You have 300 years of hiding, of surviving, of learning every inch of this planet. And most importantly, you have the memory of what humans taught you, that impossible things become possible when you fight for something bigger than yourself. Zythara began to understand. You want us to fight. I want us to fight, Sarah corrected. Together, not like the Devourers expect, not like any species has fought them before. I want us to fight like humans would, by making up the rules as we go. The first explosions echoed down from the surface as the Devourer scouts began their assault. The lights in the command center flickered, and dust fell from the ceiling. But instead of panic, Sarah saw something else spreading through the room. Determination. What do you need? Zythara asked. Sarah looked at the tactical displays, her scientific mind now working like a strategist's. Everything you know about this planet, every tunnel, every cave, every weakness in their ships that your people have observed over the centuries. And most importantly, I need you to trust me when I ask you to do things that seem crazy. The Queen smiled, and for the first time since Sarah had met her, it was not a sad expression. Dr. Chen, my people have been following the example of crazy humans for over 3 centuries. Why should we stop now? Another explosion, closer this time. The Devourer ground forces were advancing faster than expected. Sarah could hear the distinctive whine of their energy weapons echoing through the tunnels above them. Your Majesty, the chief technician called out urgently. The scouts have found our main entrance. They're beginning to cut through our defenses. Sarah felt a familiar sensation, the same mixture of fear and excitement she had felt when facing impossible research problems. The same feeling that had driven human scientists to cure diseases, explore dangerous worlds, and push the boundaries of knowledge even when it seemed hopeless. Then it's time to show them what humans taught you, she said, moving toward the weapons locker. It's time to show them that some things are worth fighting for, no matter how impossible the odds. As Sarah picked up her first alien weapon, she thought about Captain Webb and his crew. 12 ordinary humans who had faced impossible odds and won through sheer determination and creative thinking. She was just one human, but she wasn't alone. She had an entire species of allies who had spent centuries learning from humanity's greatest lesson. The lesson that heroes aren't born. They're made in the moment when ordinary people decide to do X. Extraordinary things. The battle for Kithara was about to begin, and Sarah Chen was about to discover what it truly meant to be human. The devour-cutting beams broke through the outer defenses with a sound like screaming metal. Sarah felt the underground city shake as massive chunks of stone crashed down from the ceiling. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, making the Zelenari Command Center look like something from a nightmare. They're through the first barrier, reported a technician, his voice tight with fear. Estimate 15 minutes before they reached the main city. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind working faster than it ever had before. The Devourers were advancing in perfect formation, their mechanical precision allowing them to cut through the Zelenari defenses, like they were made of paper. But that same precision might be their weakness. They're thinking like a computer, she muttered, then looked up at Zythara. That's it. They've become so focused on perfection that they can't handle chaos. What do you mean? The Queen asked. Sarah pointed to the display showing the advancing Devourer forces. Look at how they move. Perfect lines, perfect timing, perfect coordination. They've probably run 1,000 simulations of this attack, calculating every possible response. She turned to face the assembled Zelenari officers. But humans don't fight with perfect coordination. We fight with controlled chaos. We make mistakes that turn into advantages. We do stupid things that somehow work. The ceiling shook again. As another barrier fell, time was running out. Give me a team of 20 volunteers, Sarah said, and access to your maintenance tunnels. Zythara looked confused. The maintenance tunnels? But those lead directly toward the enemy. You would be walking into certain death. Exactly, Sarah smiled grimly, which is why they won't expect it within minutes. Sarah found herself crawling through narrow tunnels with 19 Zelenari volunteers. Each tunnel was barely wide enough for one person, forcing them to move. In single file, the sounds of battle grew louder as they climbed upward toward the surface. Behind her, a young Zelenari soldier named Keth whispered, Dr. Chen, what is the plan? Honestly, Sarah replied, I'm making it up as we go. That's the most human thing I can think of. She could hear nervous clicking from the soldiers behind her, but no one turned back. These Zelenari had volunteered to follow a human into an impossible situation, just like their ancestors had been saved by humans 3 centuries ago. The tunnel opened into a natural cave system just a few hundred meters from where the Devourer ground forces were advancing. Sarah peered out carefully and saw them, dozens of mechanical soldiers moving in perfect formation, their energy weapons sweeping the area with methodical precision. They're scanning for the main tunnel entrance, she whispered to her team, which means they're not watching for an attack from behind. What happened next would later be called the impossible 15 minutes. In Zelenari military history, Sarah led her small team in a series of hit-and-run attacks that defied every rule of military strategy. Instead of fighting to win, they fought to confuse. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy, they tried to make them make mistakes. They would appear from one tunnel, fire a few shots, then disappear into another tunnel before the Devourers could respond. When the mechanical soldiers turned to pursue them, they would pop up from a completely different direction. Sarah's team used rocks, explosives, and even smoke from burning vegetation to create chaos. The effect on the Devourer forces was immediate and dramatic. These machines had been programmed to expect logical, predictable behavior from their enemies, but Sarah's tactics made no sense from a military standpoint. Her team attacked when they should have retreated when they should have attacked, and seemed to have no overall strategy at all. This is working, Keth said in amazement as they watched a group of Devourer soldiers firing at shadows while the real attack came from above. Of course it's working, Sarah replied. We're not trying to be good soldiers. We're trying to be human. But their success came at a cost. The Devourers began adapting, sending smaller units to hunt them through the tunnels. Sarah's team had to split up, fighting individual battles throughout the cave system. She lost contact with half her people and could only hope they were still alive. Meanwhile, back in the command center, Zythara watched the tactical display with growing amazement. The Devourer advance had completely stalled. Their perfect formation had broken apart as they tried to respond to attacks from every direction. Some units were firing on each other in their confusion. Impossible. Breathed the chief technician. 20 people are holding off an army, not 20 people. Zythara corrected. 20 people fighting like humans. But Sarah's team couldn't hold them forever. As the Devourers began to adapt to the chaos, the attacks became less effective. Sarah found herself trapped in a dead-end tunnel with only Keth and 2 other soldiers. Facing a squad of advancing mechanical enemies, Dr. Chen, Keth said quietly, "It has been an honor to fight beside a human." Sarah looked at the young soldier, seeing the same determination in his compound eyes that she had seen in the historical records of Captain Webb's crew. "Keth, do you remember what Captain Webb said in his final transmission? That courage is not the absence of fear, but action, in spite of it." "That's right." Sarah checked her weapon's power level, nearly empty. "And do you know what I've learned fighting beside the Zelanari?" "What?" Sarah smiled. "That courage isn't a human trait. It's a choice that anyone can make." She stood up and walked toward the advancing Devourers, her empty weapon in one hand and a simple communicator in the other. The mechanical soldiers raised their weapons, but something in her posture made them hesitate. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen," she said loudly, broadcasting on all frequencies. "I'm the human you've been looking for." The Devourer squad leader's red optical sensors focused on her. "Surrender, and your death will be quick." "I'm not surrendering," Sarah replied. "I'm making you an offer." She held up a small device, a data storage unit that every scientist carried. "This contains complete records of human military tactics, psychological profiles, strategic thinking patterns. Everything you've been trying to learn about my species for 300 years. The mechanical soldiers moved closer, their sensors scanning the device. "Why would you give us this information?" Sarah's smile was sad but determined. "Because I've figured out something important about your species. Something that's going to change everything." She activated the device, and instead of tactical data, it began broadcasting the holographic records that Zythar had shown her. The images of Captain Webb's sacrifice, the desperate battle above the Zelanari homeworld, and most importantly, the final transmission that had inspired billions. But Sarah had added something to the recording, using her xenobiology knowledge. She had analyzed the Devourer technology and discovered something that changed everything she thought she knew about them. Deep in their mechanical minds, buried beneath centuries of artificial intelligence, were the remnants of their original organic consciousness. The Devourers hadn't just converted themselves to machines. They had imprisoned their own souls inside mechanical bodies, convincing themselves they had achieved perfection, when they had actually achieved the opposite. The holographic images of human sacrifice and courage began triggering something in the Devourer soldiers. Memories they thought they had deleted, emotions they thought they had eliminated, and most dangerous of all, the capacity to choose something other than destruction. As the first Devourer soldier stopped in confusion, his weapon lowering involuntarily, Sarah realized she had found the key to ending the war, but using it would require the ultimate human sacrifice. Not her life, but her humanity itself. Sarah watched as confusion spread through the Devourer squad like a virus. The first soldier had stopped completely, his weapon hanging loose in his mechanical grip. His red optical sensors flickered between different colors as buried memories fought their way to the surface. What have we become?" the soldier whispered, his voice no longer cold and mechanical, but filled with something that sounded almost like pain. The squad leader tried to reassert control. "Ignore the false memories. We are perfection. We are beyond the weakness of organic emotion." But it was too late. The holographic records continued playing. showing not just human courage but the joy, laughter, and hope that Captain Webb's crew had shared even in their final moments. Sarah had enhanced the recordings with her own memories, Christmas mornings with her family, the excitement of scientific discoveries, the simple pleasure of watching Earth's sunset. "You're not beyond emotion," Sarah said softly, addressing all the Devourer soldiers. "You buried it so deep that you forgot it was there. But it's still part of you. It's the part that made you who you were before you became machines." More soldiers began to malfunction, or rather, began to remember. Their weapons dropped as they clutched their metal heads, processing emotions they thought they had deleted. Centuries ago, the perfect formation collapsed as individuals began to experience doubt, wonder, and most dangerous of all, choice, through her communicator. Sarah could hear similar chaos erupting throughout the Devourer fleet. The recordings were being broadcast on all frequencies, spreading the awakening like wildfire through their network. Ships began changing course randomly as their crews remembered what it meant to feel curiosity instead of just hunger for destruction. But the awakening came with a terrible price. The Devourer soldiers who were remembering their organic nature were also remembering the billions of lives they had taken, the worlds they had consumed, the species they had driven to extinction. The weight of centuries of destruction crashed down on them all at once. The pain. One soldier moaned, falling to his knees. "How do you bear the knowledge of what we have done?" Sarah knelt beside the suffering machine, seeing past his metal exterior to the tormented soul trapped inside. "The same way humans bear all pain," she said gently, "by choosing to do better, by deciding that your past doesn't have to define your future. But we are machines now." The squad leader protested, though his voice had lost its commanding tone. "We cannot return to what we were." "No," Sarah agreed, "but you can become something new, something that combines the best of both worlds, the strength of machines, and the heart of living beings." Behind her, Keth and the other Zelenari soldiers watched in amazement as their deadliest enemies began helping each other up, sharing their confusion and rediscovered emotions. It was the most impossible thing any of them had ever seen, mechanical beings learning to feel again. Through the tunnels, more Zelenari arrived, led by Empress Zythara herself. The queen approached slowly, her compound eyes fixed on the group of awakening Devourers. 3 centuries of fear warred with 3 centuries of hope in her expression. "Is it real?" she asked Sarah. "Are they truly changing?" One of the Devourer soldiers turned towards Zythara, and for the first time in 300 years, a machine bowed to an organic being. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice thick with newfound emotion, "we remember now. We remember what we took from your people. We remember what we became in our pursuit of perfection." He looked up at her with optical sensors that somehow conveyed deep regret. "We cannot undo the past, but perhaps we can help build a better future." Zythara studied the machine for a long moment, then extended one of her 4 hands. "The first step toward building that future is forgiveness. Not because you deserve it, but because my people need to let go of our fear to truly live again." As the queen and the former destroyer clasped hands, Sarah felt something change in the air around them. The fear that had poisoned this world for centuries was finally beginning to lift, but their reconciliation was interrupted by urgent communications from the surface. Not all the Devourers were accepting their awakening peacefully. Some were fighting against their returning emotions, trying to purge the contamination from their systems. The fleet above was splitting into factions as individual ships made different choices about what to do with their rediscovered humanity. "We have to get to the surface," Sarah realized. "This is just the beginning. Some of your people are going to need help learning how to feel again." What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. Humans and Zelenari fought alongside, awakening Devourers against their own kind who refused to accept change. But it wasn't really a battle. It was more like therapy with weapons. Sarah found herself talking confused machines through their first experiences with emotions they thought they had eliminated forever. "It hurts to remember what we were," one Devourer captain transmitted to her as his ship hung motionless in space. "How do we live with the knowledge of what we've done?" "The same way every species learns to live with their mistakes," Sarah replied. one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of kindness at a time. The transformation took 3 days. When it was over, the galaxy had changed forever. The Devourer fleet had become something entirely new, a collection of individuals who remember their organic origins but retain their mechanical capabilities. They called themselves the Reborn, and their first act was to begin repairing the damage they had caused. Months later, Sarah stood on the surface of Kithara, watching as former Devourer ships worked alongside Zelanari engineers to build the first interspecies city. Humans from the Alliance had arrived to help with the construction, bringing with them the same spirit of cooperation that Captain Webb had shown centuries ago. Dr. Chen, Empress Zythara approached, her bioluminescent patterns now pulsing with contentment instead of fear. The Galactic Council has voted. They want to establish the Webb Accords, a treaty based on the principles your species taught us. Sarah smiled. What principles are those? That courage is a choice anyone can make. That perfection is not the absence of flaws, but the willingness to grow beyond them, and most importantly, that no one should face the darkness alone. In the distance, a reborn engineer was teaching a group of Zelanari children how to build simple machines. The children clicked with laughter as their mechanical teacher made deliberately silly mistakes, having learned that imperfection could be more beautiful than precision. Captain Webb would be proud, Sarah said softly. Yes, Zythar agreed. But I think he would be even more proud of what you accomplished. You didn't just save our people, you saved our enemies too. You reminded us all what it truly means to be alive. Sarah watched the sunset paint the alien sky in colors that reminded her of home. She had come to this world as a lost scientist and discovered that humanity's greatest export wasn't technology or weapons, but hope itself. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Sarah realized, was the most beautifully human thing of all, the ability to make impossible changes possible. One choice at a time. In the end, that was what being human really meant, not being perfect, but never giving up on the possibility of becoming better.